Today, we've got a story for you that honestly sounds like it's straight out of a movie, but it's completely real, and it's shaking up how we think about biology. It all starts with a young boy, his deep love for butterflies, and a question so simple but so profound that most scientists just never thought to ask it.
Think about this for a second. Can a butterfly remember being a caterpillar? I mean, inside that chrysalis, its body basically dissolves into this biological soup. It completely rebuilds itself from the ground up. So how could a memory, something you can't even touch, possibly survive all that? Well, that's the question that kicks off this whole incredible journey.
So where did this all begin? You might be thinking some fancy multi-million-dollar university lab, right? Nope. It started in the bedroom of a young boy with this just massive curiosity about the world around him. This is Joe. And look, when I say he was meticulous, I'm not kidding. Ever since he was in kindergarten, he wasn't just, catching bugs in a jar. He was documenting the molting patterns of caterpillars. He filled hundreds of pages with these detailed, handwritten observations. The kid was a natural-born researcher from day one. And this is where it gets really personal. Joe started noticing that the butterflies he'd raised from caterpillars were just different. They were tamer. They'd even flutter towards him. To him, it felt like they recognized him. And that sparked the big question. Could these creatures, after completely transforming their bodies, actually remember him? Now, a question that huge needs a real experiment to answer it. But how does a 10-year-old kid in Japan actually go about testing something like that? Well, he reaches out to an expert, and that's what sparks one of the most amazing and unlikely partnerships in modern science. So Joe hits the books, or, the internet, and he finds this study by an entomologist named Dr. Martha Weiss. She'd shown that moths could hang on to memories through metamorphosis. Now, Joe didn't just fire off an email. No, he sent her a 4-page handwritten letter, and get this, he included pages and pages of his own data and asked if he could try to replicate her work with his beloved swallowtail butterflies. And this, right here, is what made Joe different. Martha was, a bit skeptical at first, but Joe actually pushed back on her methods, especially her use of a chemical called ethyl acetate. He basically told her, with the simple clarity of someone who truly loves his subjects, hey, don't you know that's what people use to kill insects? His empathy was already challenging the norms of science. And that was the turning point. Martha realized, wait a minute, this isn't just some kid with a bug collection. This is a serious, insightful mind. So she agreed to mentor him. And for the next few months, they worked together across continents, figuring out how to adapt a university-level experiment so he could run it from his own home lab. Okay, so the stage is set. The question is clear. This amazing partnership is formed, and now it's time for the experiment, the one that would give us the very first stunning answer. This is where Joe's empathy really shines. He took the original experiment and just made it better. Instead of that harsh ethyl acetate chemical, he used natural lavender oil. And for the negative stimulus, he didn't want to just zap them with a high-intensity shock. So he figured out the lowest possible setting by testing it on his own arm. He wanted a reaction, sure, but he didn't want to cause any harm. The experiment itself was just beautiful in its simplicity. He taught one group of caterpillars to associate the smell of lavender with that super mild shock. He had a control group that got no training at all. Then, after they all turned into butterflies, he put them into this simple Y-shaped maze he built himself. One side of the maze had the lavender scent, the other didn't. The path they chose, well, that would tell him everything. And the results? Oh, they were crystal clear. The control group butterflies, they didn't care. They chose each path about half the time, pretty much 50-50. But the butterflies that were trained as caterpillars, about 70% of them actively avoided the lavender scent. This was not a fluke. This was a statistically significant discovery. Joe had done it. He had the first ever experimental proof that a swallowtail butterfly can remember what it learned as a caterpillar. What started as a gut feeling was now a scientific fact. Now, for most people, that would be the mic drop. End of the story. But for Joe, he was just getting started. Because what Joe did next? This is the part of the story that truly shocked the scientific world. He asked a question that pushed the absolute boundaries of what we thought was even possible. And you're not going to believe where the inspiration came from. It was just a simple, everyday observation. He noticed that he, his mother, and his grandmother all had hay fever, and it got him thinking.
If physical traits can be passed down through generations, what about learned behaviors? Could the memory he had just proved existed actually be inherited by the next generation? So he set up the next experiment. And remember that baseline from his first test? The butterflies he personally trained, the first generation, avoided that lavender scent about 70% of the time. Now here's the crazy part. He then tested their offspring, a second generation that had received zero training whatsoever. Incredibly, they also avoided the scent at the exact same rate, around 70%. But he didn't stop there. He went on to test a third generation, the untrained grandchildren. And the results? It was still there. That learned aversion to lavender was somehow biologically passed down from their grandparents. So let's just break down what this means. A learned behavior, avoiding a smell, had been inherited, and it lasted for at least 2 generations. And just showing what an amazing scientist he is, he even noted that the effect seemed a little stronger in males, but he was quick to say his data was too limited to be certain. He knew more testing was needed. A true scientist. So yeah, the results were mind-blowing, but the impact of what Joe did, it went way beyond just the scientific journals. It created this ripple effect that all started with one boy's incredible curiosity. The scientific community was just stunned. I mean, can you imagine? At international conferences, you have these veteran researchers, people who've been in the field for decades, giving this kid standing ovations. He was even invited to present his findings privately to the Crown Prince of Japan. His work basically opened up a whole new frontier, suggesting that our very experiences might leave a biological echo for generations to come. But in the end, it's so important to remember where this all came from. This wasn't about getting famous or winning awards. It was just a 10-year-old boy trying to figure out if his butterflies could actually remember him. It was born from pure, simple love and curiosity. Joe's story is just such a powerful reminder. You know, in a world full of big data and supercomputers, it really makes you wonder what other revolutionary discoveries are out there waiting not for a more powerful machine, but for someone with the courage to ask a simple question and the empathy to actually listen for the answer.